Welcome to From Guilt to Good, Self-Care Solutions for Busy Caregivers, the podcast rewriting the narrative of self-care. If you're a caregiver feeling stretched thin, torn between responsibilities and longing for self-care, then you are in the right place. I'm Jeanette Yates, a fellow caregiver and someone who spent years doing all the self-care things and never feeling any better. After years of research, self-exploration, and trial and error, I finally found a way to create a sustainable self-care practice that helps me feel good and not guilty. In From Guilt to Good, we'll explore how you can do that too. Together, we're going to hear expert insights, actionable steps, and heartfelt stories to guide you towards rediscovering your worth, reclaiming your health, and getting back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. All right, in today's episode, we are welcoming Annika Egglestone. She's a burnout prevention coach and an international speaker. She's been an entrepreneur for over 10 years and was forced to shut down her business due to burnout in 2019. Her story is incredible. She went on a 2-year recovery journey and she now teaches workshops around the world. She's passionate about helping busy people find time and energy to create joy in their lives. You know, even though she is an entrepreneur and her burnout happened differently than maybe some of our caregiving journeys are different than what it might be like for a business person, I found our conversation relevant, inspiring, and encouraging. And I mean, we talk about burnout a lot in the caregiving space, but we don't always acknowledge the severity of what happens to us when we're burning out and what happens when we don't acknowledge those signs that are giving us little warnings that something needs to change. What happened to her was severe and she was able to climb out of it. And so she is passionate about helping other people, including you and me, get out and stay out of burnout. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Oh my goodness, Annika, welcome to the From Guilt to Good podcast. The reason I wanted to have you on today is because I hear that you have cracked the code to preventing burnout. And so as a bunch of caregivers who have been in various stages of burnout, we might be in burnout now, I want to know, how do we crack this code? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get there, I want to let you share a little bit of your story because I think it's pretty interesting. And I think even though you're not specifically a caregiver, everybody's going to relate to your story.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be able to be here and hopefully to share some of the things that I've learned. Because yeah, burnout it's a very, very common thing now. And I guess to start with my story, yeah, the reason why I now teach burnout prevention is because I did have my own experience with burnout. So I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've been a business owner in some shape or form since I was 19. And at one point in 2019, I had a startup and we'd been going strong for 2 years and just been throwing everything at it. That was my life and that was the only thing in my life. And I'd let friends fall away. I'd let hobbies fall away. I'd let all of these things in my life fall away that made my life, I guess, the rich tapestry that it should be and that allows you to have that sense of balance. And it had all become about work. And what happened was 2 years into that journey, my body hit a wall and I just couldn't keep going. So yeah, what happened for me was I burned out. I had to shut it down. I had to walk away. I was stuck in bed for at least 2 months, and sort of often had to revisit periods of being just in bed.
Yes.
So yeah, like burnout had took a really intense physical toll on me, and since then, I've dived really deep in how to recover, but also seen a lot of other people go on a similar journey, even if the burnout wall wasn't as physically intense for them. It still took a real toll,
Right.
and so yeah, I've been able to help people get back on their feet with it. Or prevent it to begin with, because that's the ideal.
So you and I have like a similar situation in that we both kind of came to that burnout in our own way and then had to figure out on our own how to get out of it, how to get, through it, get over, recover from it. And then okay, now we've got to go back to life, but do we go back to the way it was before we burned out and then just get burned out again, or do we make some changes? And so I think that's one of the things that really drew me to your story. I do have a question before I do want to, we're kind of going to break down burnout today, and then we're going to talk about some ways to recover from it and prevent it. But before I do, I'm wondering, as you were talking, I had this thought because, of course, caregivers, I mean, I kind of feel like at some point as a caregiver, you're going to get burnt out in that general idea of like you're just going to work more, you're just going to do more than you should at various times because you need to, because whatever, it's going to happen, but lessening the severity of it, the frequency of it, all that kind of stuff, and then of course, if you haven't experienced burnout as a caregiver, you can have some things in place. That'd be great too. But one of the things that I think keeps caregivers especially stuck, and I'm wondering as an entrepreneur who had people working for you and a business that created this baby creation of yours, if you had any guilt around walking away from it, because like caregivers are like, yeah, that sounds great, I wish I could just shut down what I'm doing, but someone's life is in the balance. Like, so how, like, did that guilt come in for you, and if so, how did you get through that?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and 100% the guilt came in. I had a team of 10 plus people for whom I was responsible. Their livelihood was tied to this business being able to keep going. In one case, someone's visa was tied to
Mm,
being able to stay in the country, and those were all things that responsibilities that I couldn't keep up with anymore. That was, yeah, it was guilt took me a long time to work through actually
mhm,
to get to a place where I'm not okay with it now, but I understand that that just is what it is or was what it was
right.
at the time, and I did the best I could with what I had,
Yeah.
and that just has to be enough. So yeah, guilt was definitely a big factor.
A couple of things that you said there that like you didn't like get to a place where you felt super great about it. Like, oh, I'm so thrilled that I have to close this business and send people away to find other jobs. But you came to a point where you're like, whether it's what I want or not, it has to be. And this is what it has to be. And I think that for me, that's the way it came, that's what happened in my caregiving journey, and with what I was dealing with was the same kind of like, and all I know is I can't do this. I can't keep doing the same thing. Like I
Yeah.
can't keep going like I'm going. And so I was willing to take the risk of making all the changes, knowing that the way I was going to be detrimental to my health, and then by default, my mom's health, my kids' health, it was like an inevitable thing. And then another thing that you said was that you were able to kind of just kind of like get through it. Was it like just a one foot in front of the other kind of thing? Like as far as like not
As far as
trying
the
to
guilt
figure it all out, but
specifically,
just yeah, like just I just have to do this anyway.
yeah, there was a lot of just reaching the point of realizing, like you said, it has something has to change. This current
Hmm.
trajectory isn't going to work. I physically am no longer capable. And yeah, just putting one foot in front of the other, letting the feelings be what they are, and
Hmm.
understanding that yes, I'm feeling guilty right now, but also this is the right thing to do,
Hmm. Yeah.
and just trusting that this is the right thing to do, and that everything will work out to some degree for whatever is I guess meant to be, is part of what
Hmm.
I just trusted in as well, was what, it just has to happen, and let the chips fall where they may, and trust that everything will work out in some way, shape, or form for whatever
Hmm.
is meant.
Oh, that trust, like learning to trust ourselves and like what comes is just one of the hardest things. I know
Yeah.
for myself, and I think there's a lot of doubt too with caregivers. It's like, we're not doing a good job. We don't know what we're doing, and so there's this idea of like, well, how can we trust ourselves? Because we don't even know like what we're doing anyway. But that is another like skill set you have to have, is like, okay, you're just going to have to like let it go. Okay, so you talked about you were physically ill, stuck in bed. Now I want to move into some of the like burnout symptoms and kind of break down some of this stuff. One of, you know, there's you can Google like, symptoms of burnout or whatever. But also it's really hard to see when burnout is happening when you're actually burning out. Nobody's Googling that article like until after they're burned out. So I was
Yeah.
curious, did you realize you were burning out? Like, did you have some like intuition inside you that was like, you've got to take a break? Or were you just like in bed and then went, oh, I think this is burnout? Like, how did that happen?
Um, that's a really good question. When did I realize that it was burnout? I think I think I wasn't aware that anything, like I was aware something was wrong, as in I was really tired
Right,
during the phase of sort of running the business, but I never realized the depth of to which something was wrong and how tired I was.
right,
And I think that's in working with clients since that's what I've realized as well is most people don't realize how burned out they are until they hit that wall because
right.
what's happening is we're running on adrenaline a lot of the time. And
Mm-hmm,
so we're just going, okay, I've just got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, and the brain just keeps coming up with new things that it needs to do. You stay in this sort of really high energy, high elevated state. You might be
mm-hmm,
struggling to fall asleep. Um, and generally your brain is very, very active and you've got adrenaline kind of coursing through your body that's sort of pushing you to keep going and pushing you to get up
mm-hmm.
and caffeine intake and things like that might be increased. Um, those are the sorts of things that are usually happening in the body
Right,
physiologically, which means that you're not aware how exhausted you are. And a
right.
big part is if you're so afraid to stop because you know that you
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to keep going again once you do stop, uh, that's probably a good sign that you're like in burnout already. If your body just hasn't been allowed to figure that out yet.
So one of the things when I work with caregivers, and it'll be interesting to see if you've noticed this too, is like there is this like, oh, I know something's wrong, so I'm going to try to figure it out. And for like, but it's all the wrong things. It's like, oh, I just need, um, you know, I'm getting enough sleep. Like I don't have time to sleep. So that can't be it. So I'm just gonna, you know, drink caffeine and try this supplement and maybe I need to work out more because that's supposed to give you energy. Or, I'm gonna try this new food lifestyle. So there's all this like trying to problem solve, which of course is just wearing your brain out more because it's just one more thing you have to think about without really tapping into what your body is clearly trying to tell you, which is slow down or stop. And so for me, the biggest piece was to, if I was really honest and ask myself what I needed, it was sleep. It was sleep. It was sleep. And so a lot of times caregivers are like, I need more time for self care. I want to be able to do this and I want to be able to do that. And I want to be able to spend more time with my family, go to the gym, go out to brunch, blah, blah, or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, you'll get there, but first you need to just go to sleep. Like, you
Yeah.
just need to rest. So are there, like we can get to that other type of stuff, but first it's really burnout is about you're in that elevated state, you're in that fight or flight, you're in that crisis, good crisis, bad, stress, whatever you want to say, and your body is not designed to be there, right? And so the longer you're there, the less able you are to recover when you do get that snippet of downtime that you have every day, 2 days, 1 week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I love what you touched on there in terms of like a lot of the time people need sleep more than anything else.
Right.
Especially once you get to burnout. So one of the biggest thing I say is when you get home at the end of the day and if you do have downtime, just give yourself permission to go to bed early. I know
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
like just blob in front of the TV or like do something that feels like it was yours, but just sleep. Like go to bed
Right.
early. You need it right now.
Hmm.
And there'll be time in the future for those other things, but catch up on rest.
Right. Like the two things I recommend first usually are sleep and water. Like how much water are you having? Um, So, what are some other ways that we can know that we're in burnout other than we're exhausted and we're afraid to stop? So we're tired, you know, and we're afraid to stop. What are some other things that we can look for?
Yeah. So some other things you can look for is how mentally sharp are you and how
Hmm.
physically sharp are you? So when I say mentally sharp, I'm thinking of if you have to, when you're at work and you have to produce something, whether it's, you have to write an email or do something creative. For me, I had to write advertising copy for clients.
Hmm.
That was still part of my job as in the business. I remember just sitting staring at a blank page, just going, brain, work. Like, why are you not working? What's going on? And because like my brain was just so fried, it couldn't
Right.
generate anything creative. It couldn't come up with new stuff. It was problem solving was harder. Everything just felt slow and sluggish. I sometimes call it like you're walking through mud almost in terms of
Hmm.
how hard everything feels and how hard it feels to engage your brain. So that's
Hmm.
sort of the mentally sharp side of it. And then when I talk physically sharp, so the things that sort of were happening for me was I would drop things a lot because I was in such
Hmm.
a hurry. So I would always be, I would be doing something, but I would be thinking about the next thing I need to be doing and the five other things I'm doing. And I'm in such a hurry that I'd drop something or I'd forget something. I'd burn myself while I was cooking a lot because I just wouldn't be fully paying attention. And I still remember like I would be standing under the tap, sorry, not standing under the tap, but my hand would be
Hmm.
under the tap and I'd be
Right.
standing there and dinner would be cooking behind me and I'd be like, oh man, like I still have to deal with dinner, but I've just made
Right.
my life so much harder than I needed to.
Yeah.
And just that sense of
Mm.
overwhelm at the amount of stuff I still have to do, and I've just made it harder on myself. And what
Hmm.
am I doing? And that sort of that physical, I guess, lack of sharpness as well when your body starts making life harder for you because you're not fully paying attention.
I used to I used to spill things all the
Yeah.
time. Like I always have like a cup of water or something, and I'll just knock you know, the whole thing all over the place if I'm not well rested, calm, all those things. So I can relate to that. And I think there's something about standing in front of running water. So you're either like standing in the shower or like in front of the sink, and the running water I think does something to our brains where we do start to like let go a little bit, and then we're like, oh, oh no.
Yeah,
You
that's
start to see
true.
things. Yeah, you start to like see how crazy everything really is, how intense everything really is. So it's like a good thing, but also,
Yeah.
it's like
Well, it's also you
then the
can't
stuff's,
you can't leave,
yeah,
right? Like in the shower,
yeah,
you're standing there, you're under the flowing water, and like with the tap with the burn, you're supposed to hold your hand there for 10 minutes. When was
yeah,
the last time that you were still for 10 minutes and didn't
right.
have to immediately move on to the next thing? Like it's a major inconvenience in that moment when you're
Hmm.
burnt out of like, but I have to do all these other things, but there's nothing I supposedly can do about this. And yeah, it gives you
Hmm.
that moment of stillness to just feel a sense of that overwhelm a little bit.
Right. And that's well, that's one of the first things I'm gonna let you tell us. But that's one of the first things, to be aware is the first key to making any change, right? To understanding it. But I really want to switch to let's do a little problem solving here. I really want you to tell us about your code cracking skills for burnout, because one of the things that I really like about your formula is it includes efficiency, which is something that all caregivers are like, "Oh, you're going to help me do more things in less time. That's exactly what I need. I need to do more in less time." And joy. And that is something that many caregivers, I know, it was one of the ways that I realized that I was in burnout, that I needed to change something, was that I wasn't able to enjoy even the things that should have been enjoyable. So like caregiving isn't always going to be like the stuff that you have to do for caregiving isn't always fun. It's sad. It's all of these things. But even the things that should have been joyful, whether it be in caregiving or with my family or with my life or my job, I just wasn't. I wasn't able to find that joy. And so I really want you, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you tell us about this combination of efficiency and joy and how we might be able to use that in our life to get rid of burnout, to stop it, to shut it down.
All
Okay,
right,
Annika, take it away.
let's do it. Yeah, so efficiency and joy, right? So efficiency, the reason why I say efficiency is because the biggest thing that we have when we are in burnout, and either we've realized it or we don't even realize it yet, is the biggest thing is, oh, but I need more time. And so what we do with the efficiency part of it, that usually comes first, is we find ways to make time. To break
Mm-hmm.
that down even further, there's two ways that we do that. The first one is we reduce the amount of input that we have in our lives. So somewhere along the way in sort of human society, especially in modern day, the pace of life has picked up. Our phone is constantly giving us input. Maybe we're always feeling like we should be listening to a podcast, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, we should be consuming in some shape or form. And mindless social media scrolling as well becomes like the default way to switch off. But that's
Mm-hmm.
all input. And
Right.
when we're burned out, our brain is overstimulated a lot of the time. We're trying to think of too many things all of the time, which is, as you were referencing before, that's put us into threat mode. It's not where we're designed to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Right.
thinking the brain's like I have this beautiful analogy of every time you see your phone ding, your brain goes, "What was that rustle in the bushes? Like, is that a tiger?
Right.
Is that food? What is it?" Like, it
So
needs to
true.
pay attention.
Oh my goodness. I love that analogy. That's really good. Because
Yeah.
our body, that was one of the, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that was one of the things with my mom. Because like she lives in a nursing facility now and gets taken care of 24/7. But and I am able to just visit with her during the week and stuff. But when she was at home by herself, every time I would get a text from, I would first of all assume it was from her before I even looked. And second of all, it was like, what does she need? What does she need? And sometimes she was just like, oh, I'm watching a TV show. Thought I'd tell you about it. So it wasn't even like she was just trying to talk to me like a normal mom. But in my brain, she needs to go to the hospital, like because, well, she's been sick my whole life. So like it's not a new thing either. So this is like an ingrained, there's an emergency, there's an emergency, there's an emergency. So that's so interesting that you said that because I'm like, yeah, that was automatically flipping me into crisis mode almost every single time. And then of course, when it dings, no matter who it is. So I did have to train myself to, well, first of all, my phone does not ding at
Yep.
all. And then the second thing, of course, that like not every notification needs to be addressed right away or is something bad.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's very,
Absolutely.
very good. All right. So why do you think incorporating, oh yeah, I think you need to go into the joy part, right? So like that's the
Yeah.
joy part.
So
Okay.
so we'll do two bits. So we've done reduce input, which is part one
Yeah.
of efficiency.
Okay. Okay. Efficiency.
Then part two of efficiency is just make your life easier. So we
Right.
have, when we are in burnout, the amount of energy that we have is actually very limited. And
Mm,
we actually, whether we can see it or not in the moment, we actually have a lot of places in our life where we have wasted energy. And so what
mm,
we're trying to do when we make our life easier is we're trying to reduce the amount of energy expenditure that we exert in the world, the amount of energy that we give unnecessarily, because everything costs you now. And I think that's
mm,
a very important mind shift to make when you're feeling so exhausted, is everything that you do costs you. So make sure the things that you do matter. And what I'm talking about here is very, very micro things. I'm talking about, if you do get a chance to sit on the couch, do you need to get up to go across the room or to another room to go get your phone charger? When you're trying to get into the house each day, do you know where your keys are, or do you stand there for a minute, rummaging through your bag, trying to figure out where your keys are, let yourself
yes.
into the house? All of these little things cost you energy. that's time that you could be spending sleeping or just relaxing in some way, shape, or form. And so that's what I'm talking about, is taking those moments and claiming them back for yourself, because then you have that energy for yourself that you can then use and put towards joy.
Right. So to name the two pieces again, there was like
Yep.
reduce the input and
Yep.
then
And make life easier.
make life easier. Yes. Totally agree. Love that. All about having a place for everything and making sure it's yes. Organization is definitely part of self-care. At least, even if you're not like a super neat freak, it's like at least know where your stuff is.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. Know where your
bare
stuff
minimum.
is. Know what's going on as well. So another place that we
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of accidental energy is just mentally, just with our brain going,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and this needs to happen and that needs to happen, and oh, I mustn't forget to go buy milk, whatever it might be. So
Yes.
it's taking all of that stuff out of your head and putting it down on paper, putting it
Mm-hmm.
into your calendar or your phone or somewhere where you can trust technology to remember things for you, so that your
Mm-hmm.
brain can have a little bit of sense of, ah, it's okay. Like, I don't need to worry about this. Because
Right.
again, thinking of that life or death thing, your brain's going, it's a threat, it's a threat, it's a threat. Where are the other threats? And that's why it keeps
Mm.
coming up with what it thinks are threats, because it doesn't know any better. It's just
Right.
going, I'm on adrenaline, I'm in threat mode, there's got to be threats everywhere. And
Right.
it turns to-do lists into threats. So take those to-do
Yeah.
lists, take all
Ooh.
of those random things that you have and put them down on paper. I find paper is better initially because it just
Mm-hmm.
gives you a chance to brain dump, and then from
Yes.
there put the important things into your diary. Because a lot of the time,
Mm-hmm.
once you have it down on paper, you go, ah, that doesn't matter. I don't know
Right.
why I thought, like, when it was in my head, it was really important, but now that it's here, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not actually a priority. I can put that down.
Right.
But at least your
Right.
brain has had the chance to go, okay, it's on paper. I don't have to think about it anymore.
Right. I think too, like you said, sometimes we realize it's not as important as we thought. And also, maybe we don't even have to do it at all. Or if we did forget it, you know, we need to have grace for ourselves and just be like, yeah, people forget things. It's okay.
Yeah, the world's
Like,
not going to end.
yeah, it's fine. Uh, we're all human. Okay, so that was really helpful. Is there anything else about that efficiency piece, or are we going to move into joy? Ready
I
for
think let's
joy?
move
I'm
into
ready for
joy. Let's
joy.
do
Let's do
it.
it.
All right. So we've saved ourselves some time. We've claimed back some little moments. We're not spending excess energy. We've given our brain a chance to calm down. I think the biggest reason why we can't enjoy things in the moment, like you were saying, is because we're in that stress cycle and in that threat cycle of everything. The world is ending. Like, what do you mean you want me to enjoy this moment? That's not an option. So once you've done the efficiency side of it, then you can start applying that to joy. And the reason why joy is so important when it comes to burnout prevention is because that's what feeds your soul. So we burn out because we don't give our soul enough attention. We don't do things that
Mm,
nourish us. We don't take care of ourselves. And so we have this, I call it, we have a voice in our chest that says, what about
mm-hmm.
me? When do I matter?
Right,
And
right.
there's only so long we can go in life not acknowledging that voice before we hit
Mm,
burnout.
yeah.
So that's where the why joy matters, is it feeds our soul and nourishes us in that way.
I love that I think I've said this 10 times already. I love that you said that. You're saying a lot of things that I love, Annika. Well, because when you're saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, that little voice in there, that's like your inner child or your inner voice. That's yourself telling you, I'm still here. And I think a lot of times, especially for caregivers, probably also for busy entrepreneurs, it's like our voice gets quieter and quieter the more we're listening and attending to everyone else's needs. I interviewed a mental health counselor recently on the podcast, and she was talking about how your body tells you what it needs, but then if you don't listen to it, eventually, like, it stops communicating so clearly, so you can't always tell what your body needs because it's you know trying other tactics like putting you in bed for 2 months, So I think that, when we're able to acknowledge that we still matter as people, that yes, the care that you give other people is important, but also you are worthy of that same care, attention, love, and joy. Many of us caregivers are, wanting to make sure that our parents are happy and that we're giving them the love and attention they need. And it's like, but we also still need love and attention. We are not more important than other people, but we're as important as everyone else. And I think too, if you're not enjoying at least part of your life, then, getting out of burnout is really hard because it seems hopeless. It seems like,
Yeah.
why,
What's the
why
point?
bother? Excuse me. Yeah. So I think finding those pockets of joy, finding ways to infuse joy into even the busiest of times is so crucial. What is something that you started, if you can think back to like that, you're climbing out of the burnout, what is something that you found joy in pretty quickly? Like what was an easy way to bring joy into your life even during that
It's gonna not sound easy, but it's really funny how easily it came about. So
time?
for me, basically, I hit burnout, was in bed for 2 months. I then ended up leaving the city I was in and moving to the countryside to take care of a friend's rural property for a while, and out in the
Mhm.
countryside. And it was amazing how quickly my brain went, I don't have to do anything right now. Like I'd kind of left everything behind and didn't have to do
Mhm.
anything for about 2 weeks. Remember how you used to love horses when you were a child? Like, remember how you always dreamed of having horses and being around them? I think we need to do that. And so, what I ended up doing was I moved to a place where I could learn how to train horses. Um, didn't have the physical capability to do it, but even just being around them.
Mm.
So, just being able to go out and just spend time with these beautiful creatures nourished me in a way that I hadn't done in such a long time.
That is the perfect thing that you could have shared for many reasons. Number one, I just love how the situation provided what you needed at the time. Like, that's just amazing. And, as someone who, like, I see a therapist, we work on inner child stuff, and she's always, and, like, one of the things that I talk about with her, and then I talk about with my own clients that are caregivers, is like, what would your inner child, like, go back to that sense of play, like when you were a child, like, what did you love to do? Go do, go do that thing. And so I love that, like, that's basically what happened. Like, that's what you did. And like you said, it's not like, oh, we can all just go train horses. But it was easy for you because of the circumstances surrounding. And like you said, maybe you can't train a horse, but you can be around horses, you can talk to trainers, you can learn about it. There's other ways to infuse that joy in your life. So that was the perfect example. I love it. And I don't know which countryside you were in, but I'm imagining one, and I want to go there too. So,
I was in New Zealand, so yes, New Zealand
okay.
countryside is spectacular, like very, very few other places. So it's pretty
So I
special.
actually have family that lives in New Zealand.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, yes. Don't ask me where. I would have to look it up, but, I know they live there. And they always are telling me like, you should come. It's very beautiful. So maybe that's where the first, self caregiver retreat will be, in New Zealand. But yeah, so, Annika, you have shared already so much with us today. And so I just want to, as we wrap up, is there anything that you would want to tell someone who feels like they can't do this? Like, I can't stop doing anything that I'm already doing. I can't reduce the amount of input. I can't make things easier because everything is just happening to me. I feel out of control. What would you say to someone who's like, I don't have any control over this situation, I'm just in it? What would you say to them? I'm putting her on the spot, y'all. These were not the questions
No,
I sent
that's
her.
all good. It's so the reason why I'm hesitating is because it's probably not something that they're going to want to hear.
Yeah.
Um, and because my answer is you can't afford not to. You
Yes.
genuinely
Yes.
cannot afford not to change.
Yeah.
I think of there's like as we go through life and with our energy, we have a threshold. We have like a wall
Mm,
that is burnout, and everything that we do in our life takes us closer or further away from that wall. And
mm,
so if we're operating in life at such a high capacity that we're just sort of being really close to that wall of burnout,
hmm
then it's just going to take one extra thing to tip you over the edge.
Yep.
And
Yep.
in the case of caregiving, sometimes that can come unexpectedly. It's like, okay, this is an extra
Right.
thing now that I didn't have capacity for. I'm done. That like and
Yeah.
you could keep going for a little while. Like you can be like alongside that wall for a little while because your body has
hmm
reserves. It has adrenaline. It can
Right.
caffeine. Like you can keep going, but at some point that reserve will run out. And
Exactly.
when that runs out, I've seen people be, go into psych wards and things like that, like have to be
hmm
hospitalized. It is much, much harder to keep up with the things that you have going on when you're burned out, like when you fully hit
Right.
that wall, when you've run out of reserves, than not. So you cannot afford not to do anything about this because you're going to hit that wall and the obligations will
Right.
still be there. So get
Right.
ahead of
Right.
it. Just get ahead of it. It's not worth it.
Yeah. I think that is a good place to stop. That is exactly the right thing to say because it is true. We're not talking about getting more time for yourself. Yes, eventually, please go get a massage, go to the countryside, learn how to train horses, all those things. But like really, this is about your life. This is not just about like having more time to yourself to have fun. This is about making sure that you're still here. Burnout is not just like when we're tired all the time, that it actually has physical, emotional, mental repercussions if we don't do something about it. So, Annika, thank you so much for your time today. You have given our listeners and watchers a little 5-day program that they can use to work through some burnout. I'm also going to put some resources that I have specifically designed for caregivers with burnout because we all know that it is a little bit different. And I'll also drop your social, My Joyous Life, love that, in the show notes as well so people can reach out to you. I am also going to be reaching out to you again because I love this conversation. I think that you have cracked the code, and I love that you talk about the seriousness of burnout in the same way that I do. So I really love that we have that similar, like, you know, let's get some clarity, let's get some capacity uh, adjustments, let's start taking that time. You said make time, I say take it, but the same idea, like you're not going to find it, probably no one's going to give it to you. So you just
Yeah.
got to take it or make it, to your point. So thank you, Annika, for making the time for me today and our audience. I appreciate you, and I look forward to talking with you again really soon.
Thank you, Jeanette. It's been a real
Thank
pleasure.
you for joining me today. From Guilt to Good podcast is a proud member of the Whole Care Podcast Network. To access additional self-care resources that help you feel good, not guilty, check out the show notes. Subscribe now and join me in going from guilt to good as you rediscover your worth, reclaim your health, and get back the life you've been too busy or exhausted to enjoy. And if you've enjoyed this show, please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback matters. We're redefining self-care for caregivers one episode at a time. And until next time, remember, you are worthy of the same care you give others.